Hello Legacy students, Miss Marsh here. So today we're going to look at how to solve a quadratic equation by taking a square root. What you're going to want to have on you today, you're going to want to have your notes, a calculator, and then a pen or a pencil. Your learning goals: I can solve a quadratic equation by using a square root when appropriate. Now, there's different types of equations. So we've solved 3x plus 4 equals 16. But now we're going to look at 3x squared plus 4 equals 16. But now, this x squared is going to change the way we perform the final step. But in all actuality, it's going to be almost the same way. What's going to happen, though, is you're going to actually get two answers because there's a squared term. So the squared tells me how many answers I'm actually going to get. I'm going to get two answers for these problems. So when are you going to factor and when are you going to use solve by the square root? There's two times you know you're going to do it. You're going to factor when you have a middle term with the x. So in particular, you're going to factor when you have it this way. But you are not going to factor when you see something like this, when there is a non-middle x term in the middle. So just x squared minus 6 equals 0. You can solve that one just by taking a square root. What you're also going to want to make sure you keep in the back of your mind is the perfect squares. So go ahead and pause the video. Make sure you write these down if you don't know them to about, let's say, maybe 144 is where you want to kind of be. The rest of them, kind of know them, but the 144 is probably the top most that you're going to want to have memorized. Let's try solving here. So I got 3x squared plus 5 equals 41. Start solving, isolate x squared, okay? So basically, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I'm going to get 3x squared equals 41 minus 5. Let me do that on my calculator quick. That's 36. Okay. Divide by 3, because we've got to get the x squared alone. And I get 12, right? 36 divided by 3. So now, what I need to do to get rid of this x squared, you're going to solve by taking the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now, if I take the square root of a squared term, basically all they do is they cancel each other out. Kind of like addition and subtraction cancel each other out. So I'm going to be left with x equals. Now, if you take the square root of something, you need to definitely make sure that you put a plus or minus in there. Here's the reason. If I square a negative, I get a positive. If I square a positive, I get a positive. So I got to check for both kinds of answers that could give me 12, right? So I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of 12. But we're big kids, right? We're in Algebra 2. We need to know, we got to break down that square root of 12. So I got to find a perfect square that can go into 12. Well, 1 is a perfect square. It's not going to really help us. 4. I think 4 goes into 12, doesn't it? So let's break 12 down. So I got square root of 4, square root of 3. Because inside of that, that makes 12, right? If I multiply. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. Right? Square root of 3, that's just 1.6, something like that. So I can rewrite square root of 12 as 2 square roots of 3. So I have an answer of x equals 2 square roots of 3. And then don't forget about your plus or minus in the front. Let's try another one. So I got 2x squared minus 15 equals 65. So first of all, isolate your x squared. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. And I'll get 2x squared equals 80. Yeah? 65 plus 15? That's 80. Let's divide by 2. That's going to give me 40. Now, I'm at x squared. So now you're going to take a square root of both sides. And I'm going to get x on this side, because the squared and the square root are going to cancel each other out. Don't forget, plus or minus. Now, I still have the square root of 40. But, just like last time, we're big kids. We're going to break down the square root of 40. So a perfect square that can go into 40 is 4. And then 4 times 10 gives me 40, right? Square root of 4 is 2. So I have an answer of plus or minus 2 square roots of 10. Let's try a third one. 4x squared minus 5 equals 9. Start solving. So we're going to add 5. 9 plus 5, that's 14. Looks like we got to divide by 4. Now, 14 divided by 4. Leave that so it looks nice, okay? So 14 over 4, I can simplify that down to 7 over 2, right? Oops. Okay, let's take a square root of both sides. So I'm going to get x equals plus or minus the square root of 7 halves. Now, you don't want to have a fraction under a square root. So what you're going to do is you're going to give that square root to both the top and the bottom. So I'm going to have square root of 7 over the square root of 2. Okay? Another wrinkle in our problem, though. We can't have a radical on the bottom. The big no-no, mathematicians frown upon it. They almost have a heart attack. So what you're going to do is you're going to rationalize the denominator by multiplying by the denominator that's currently there. So I got square root of 7 times the square root of 2. Square root of 7 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 14. Basically all you do is multiply the radicands, the numbers inside the little box thing. And then I'm going to do square root of 2 times the square root of 2. Well, that's the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. So my answer is x equals plus or minus the square root of 14 divided by 2. And the last one for today. So I have 3 times the quantity, x minus 2 squared minus 1 equals 39. So let's start solving. Let's add 1. Now, you're probably going to be tempted to add 2. Don't add 2, because this x minus 2 is inside that squared. You can't touch it until we take the square root. So let's divide by 3 now. So I'll have x minus 2 squared equals 40 over 3. That doesn't simplify down, so we're just going to leave it like that. Now, I can finally do my square root on both sides. So I'll get x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 40 over 3. Kind of long. Let's break down the square root of 40 over 3. So off the side here, I'm going to write that down. So I'm going to square root of 40 over square root of 3, right? Rationalize that denominator. So I'm going to get square root of 120 over 3. Because square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. Now, let's break down 120. So the perfect square that can go into 120 is just 4. So I'll have square root of 4 and square root of 30, right? Square root of 4, that's just 2. So I can rewrite the top as 2 square roots of 30 over 3. So now, let's pop back over here. I got x minus 2 equals plus or minus, let's rewrite that as what we found. So 2 square roots of 30 all over 3. Now, you're probably saying, well, x isn't solved for, Marsh. It's x minus 2. So, let's add 2 to both sides. Where are we going to add that 2? Well, the 2 is basically just going to go and sit in front of that plus or minus. So my final answer for this particular problem, I'm going to have 2 plus or minus 2 square roots of 30 all over 3. Pretty gross if you ask me, but nevertheless, it's an answer. You can get a decimal off of that if you want. And that's the end of this video. See you later, Sabers!